Member Alfred Nairo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mr. Speaker. Before I start, I want to acknowledge our Pukapukan community inside the gallery. Kia ora koutou katoa nui matoa. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak today in our general debate. But firstly, I want to acknowledge we're talking about jobs this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. It's the National Social Workers Day of celebration to celebrate our social workers, approximately 1,300 of them in the SIPS social work department, who address 400 notifications of abuse and neglect in our country every day, Mr. Speaker. I want to acknowledge that. Often as a government we've been accused that we don't care, Mr. Speaker, yet in this regard the government has announced funding to increase the number of frontline social workers by 96 last year, and around half that number are now at work, Mr. Speaker. There's around about 149 full-time Swiss workers, that's the social workers in schools, and as was quoted by the Minister this afternoon, the SIPS targets have increased, non-notifications have increased, and we're now being able to address those to a percentage of 97% from 42% previously, Mr. Speaker. So that's a great result. So I do want to acknowledge that. I do have family members who are social workers who are doing a great job. The social workers in schools offer early responsive social work and intervention, and we're increasing those opportunities of employment where it truly matters, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the welfare reforms that are coming up, because this becomes very important. Now, with the welfare reforms, Mr. Speaker, the purpose that's in the Social Security Act of 1964 clearly indicate to help people to find or retain paid employment. The principle and the duty of that Act says this, Mr. Speaker: work in paid employment offers the best opportunities for people to achieve social and economic well-being. Mr. Speaker, that's why it becomes important. That's why this government is focusing where it should be on providing employment. But Mr. Speaker, wait for it. It will come. It's like Tourette's. You'll hear this: where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? And it often gets spouted up so very quickly from either side of the House. But Mr. Speaker, no matter how many times we quote from Trade Me or from Seek, the 60,000 jobs that are produced by this government are encouraged by this government, Mr. Speaker, you'll still see it's not enough, Mr. Speaker. But can I say this, Mr. Speaker? With this government, not only are we increasing opportunities for jobs, but there are around 1,000 people who've now come off the unemployment benefit. There are more than 5,600 that have been decreased on the unemployment benefit. Mr. Speaker, not only are we increasing opportunities, but Mr. Speaker, we're also trying to encourage our people into jobs. So here it is from Mr. Parker. Mr. Clark over there across the way. Mr. Speaker, I was actually in your hometown in the area of South Auckland, Mr. Speaker, and here's the interesting thing. We were there with the Prime Minister in the heart of Māngere, Mr. Speaker, and we met with some of the providers over there, or businesses and local trusts, and this is what they said, Mr. Speaker. From the Rise Up Trust, who work with families around education, that becomes very important to us. One of the members there, the CEO, stood up and said this to the Prime Minister while we were there, and simply said this: Prime Minister, we want to say thank you for national standards. Thank you for national standards, that's right. And she said this because it's the people of this community, the Pacifica and Māori people of this community, do want to know how our schools are performing, because that becomes important to them. And this is what they also said, Mr. Speaker. Not only thank you for national standards, but also thank you for your Minister of Education, Hekia Parata. The reasons why? They said this: because she's a woman who has a woman's heart, and sometimes we need to have that essence for us, for our young people, so that they go through educational journey. And here's the last thing, Mr. Speaker, you'll like this. They said this: give us charter schools. Give us charter schools. We were taken back too, Mr. Speaker. And the reason why they said give us charter schools is this: Mr. Speaker, they wanted to know how they could create greater opportunities for training and employment for their young people. Yes, Mr. Speaker, they too are sick and tired of the lack of training and opportunities, of the underachievement that's happening in their communities. Mr. Speaker, these communities that are supposedly the heartland of labour, and this has got to hurt. This has got to hurt, because in your Pacifica communities, when you didn't listen to your spokesman of Pacifica, who said don't do this because we'll lose 30,000 votes. And guess what? The Labour Party didn't listen. So their spokesman for the Pacifica community said it's a betrayal. They didn't listen. And guess what happened, Mr. Speaker? That community is beginning to change, and they're beginning to say this: maybe there's another option. We've voted for Labour for so long, we haven't seen all the results. Guess what, Mr. Speaker? They're coming to our meetings, they're standing up and they're speaking up, and they're saying this: National provides another opportunity for us. That's right, you can wave your head side to side, Mr. Robertson, but guess what? The truth speaks louder than words.
I call the honourable member